Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Freddie Perez, and I am the Associate for Community Outreach at the Paralysis Resource Center of the Christopher Dana Reeve Foundation. Thank you for joining us today in our webinar titled Supporting the Paralysis Community of Pennsylvania. First and foremost, I would like to say that I hope you, your families, and communities are doing well during these times. And thank you for joining us this afternoon. Today's webinar will cover a short presentation on the free programs and services the Paralysis Resource Center offers. And we will also have an opportunity to hear from our keynote provided by Steve Pennington, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Client Assistance Program. The goal for this event is to share with fellow stakeholders that support and are involved in the world of paralysis how the Paralysis Resource Center can help your communities. In addition, our keynote serves to provide information about how they may be of assistance as a community support. We are excited to share information, and we hope that you leave this webinar with additional resources and support that you can take back to your organizations, communities, and other networks. With that being said, let's get started. The Paralysis Resource Center at the Christopher Dana Reeve Foundation promotes the health, well-being, and independence of people living with paralysis, spinal cord injury, or other mobility impairments. We are a free, comprehensive national source of informational support for people living with paralysis, their families, and their caregivers. Our primary goals are to foster involvement in the community, promote health, and improve the overall quality of life. I would also like to add that all of this is possible with the support of the Administration for Community Living. Since 2002, the PRC has provided resources, programs, and services that enable people living with paralysis to live independently. Christopher Reeve once said, "Once you choose hope, anything's possible." And today, not only is there hope for people with paralysis, but there is a path forward as well. As a base starter, in 2013, the Christopher Dana Reeve Foundation unveiled statistics on research based into the prevalence of paralysis across the United States. According to the study, there are nearly 1 in 50 Americans living with paralysis, approximately 6 million people. Of that 6 million, 1.3 million are living with spinal cord injury. As many of you are aware, paralysis is dramatically more widespread than that were once previously thought. Each year around the world, between 250,000 to 500,000 people sustain a spinal cord injury. Now that we know what the Paralysis Resource Center is and the prevalence of paralysis, this brings me to our first area of support. Our information specialists provide customized support and answer paralysis-related questions. What's important are the following 3 bits of information. You can reach out to us online, via call, or email. Our information specialist team assists people as they move through the various stages of their injury or their life. We have assisted over 100,000 families to date, and we offer multilingual resources that include language interpreters for phone calls and translation services for print and web in over 170 languages. Our entire information specialist team is trained and certified to help anyone, from newly paralyzed individuals and their family members to persons who have lived with disabilities for quite some time, as they attempt to navigate their changing world and the services available to them. We pull from a wide array of information and expertise to devise personalized plans and approaches to getting individuals living with paralysis back into their community and a place of well-being quickly. For more information, please visit www.christopherreeve.org/ask. As many of you are aware, there are a number of different conditions that can cause paralysis. This slide represents many of the conditions our information specialists can assist with. Of course, while Christopher Reeve's injury put a spotlight on spinal cord injury, that is not the only condition that we serve. I will also add that the leading cause of paralysis based on our findings was stroke, followed by spinal cord injury, and then multiple sclerosis. On this journey, you will have many questions undoubtedly. The PRC recognizes how important it is for families to find the answers to their questions. It can be an overwhelming time. You feel like the room is spinning. I remember when I first started at the Paralysis Resource Center, staff members would tell me the story of how when Chris got injured, it felt like his whole family was transported to a whole new world. They had to go to several doctors, specialists, organizations to find answers to their questions. The Paralysis Resource Center was Dana Reeve's vision as the go-to place of support for families who had similar questions, who needed the support, and who were looking for someone to tell them that there is a future ahead of this journey. Some of the questions we regularly receive are, what should I be looking for in a rehabilitation program? What are the body changes and health conditions that one should expect as they age? Or how can I learn more about home modification? Know that our information specialist team stands ready to assist and help answer any paralysis-related questions you may have. Our fact sheets are updated regularly to include information and services on paralysis topics, as well as state and international resources. At the moment, we have our COVID-19 fact sheets available in 9 languages. State resources include all U.S. state and territories. Topical resources, anything from aging with SCI to cancer for people with disabilities to playground accessibility to public transportation are also included in there, and Spanish resources as well. I invite you all to visit our fact sheets page, which can be found at www.christopherreeve.org. The Paralysis Resource Center is known for its many educational materials and publications. Our goal is to keep individuals, families, and professionals well informed on topics that are important to the paralysis community. Of course, when we think about these materials, we think of the Paralysis Resource Guide, a general guidebook for living a healthy, active, and independent life. However, this is one of many resources available to our community. We have our wallet cards, which allow folks to carry critical information on their person regarding automatic dyslexia, deep vein thrombosis, and sepsis. These handy wallet cards provide the life-saving information those staffing ENT units, emergency rooms, and other health centers need to best treat you. There are a variety of topics that we have publications on, including pain management, women's mental health after paralysis, and parenting with paralysis, to name a few. I would also like to add that these publications, wallet cards, and books are available for free. If you are interested in receiving them, please reach out to me and we can have them shipped to you. Mylene once said, "Even after 20 years of living with a spinal cord injury, I still had questions that my primary or rehabilitation doctor could not answer. I used the Reeve Foundation website and forum for answers. I have also called the information specialist on various occasions." I want to note that Mylene has been coming to the PRC for 20 years now and is a prime example of how, no matter where you are in your journey, the Paralysis Resource Center can help. The Peer and Family Support Program. Individuals living with paralysis can feel overwhelmed and sometimes alone. Reeve Peer Mentors provide support, emotional as well as resourceful, to members of their community, their families, and caregivers. People have unique experiences and who have done this, done that sort of stories can help people's adjustment to their new normal. We match people with similar levels of paralysis and or experiences. We offer caregiving mentoring as well. Peer mentors are certified and trained, and currently we have over 440 certified peer mentors who are living with paralysis. We have helped 12,000 people receive support. We cover 42 states, and we have logged in more than 19,000 encounters. For more information, please visit www.christopherreeve.org/peer. On this journey, our community can help with practical experience. These are some of the most common questions we hear from our community who are seeking advice from our peer mentors. Who did you use in your town for home modification services? What were your experiences when hiring a personal care assistant? And have you ever tried the local public transportation? Is it accessible? The program allows for very little to high amounts of communication. People can choose to meet in whatever platform is most comfortable to them. And if there's only one question that they need help with, we can take care of that as well. Here we have Brooke and Ashley. Prior to having a mentor, I had a difficult time expressing my feelings to my family and friends. They could not fully understand the grief that I was feeling after my accident. Ashley is able to relate to me in certain ways my family and friends just couldn't. Ashley knows how to encourage me, which makes my life easier with paralysis and learning to move forward much easier. When Brooke was injured, she reached out to the Peer and Family Support Program and was paired with Ashley, and they have been friends for over 2 years now. Ashley has been an important support to Brooke as she goes through the life with paralysis. If your communities are seeking similar support, please feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you with our program manager. A flagship program of ours, the Quality of Life Grants Program, strives to empower the individuals with paralysis and their families. We provide grants to nonprofit organizations that improve quality of life through inclusion, access, independence, opportunities for community engagement, and other life-enhancing endeavors. In addition, to date, we have funded 3,153 programs nationwide, awarded over $28 million. In my next slide, I will briefly discuss the different grants we have available, but you can find more detail online at www.christopherreeve.org/QOL. I have been fortunate enough to witness some great projects funded in the last year, most recently having the opportunity to see the real-world impact an accessible playground can have for children, and what that means for the development and inclusion within society. I have witnessed the difference it makes having a wheelchair-accessible van that can transport patients to and from their rehabilitation appointments. the importance of community centers and camps to be inclusive and accessible, the creation of a disaster preparedness program for an independent living center in Puerto Rico. These are just some of the many examples of programmatic efforts we have funded in the past. In this slide, you will have 4 types of grants. The first one being Direct Effect, an open focus grant of up to $25,000 to support the wide range of projects and activities. This is offered twice a year in the spring and the fall. Our second, our High Impact Grant, offers 3 increasing levels of grant funding. Each tier is targeted to focus on a high priority issue for the community of individuals living with paralysis and their families. The 5 priorities include transportation, respite caregiving, disaster preparedness, nursing home transition, and employment. This is offered once per year in the fall. Our expansion grant started in 2019. We began piloting a new grant program for previously awarded quality of life grantees, whose programs and projects achieve demonstrable successful impact. We award 6 grants of up to $100,000 each and will support significant expansion of strategies and programs that are evidence-based, show innovation, and promise practices that serve to improve the quality of life. We currently offer this once a year in the spring. Lastly, we have the High Impact Innovative Assistive Technology Grant. This is restricted to state and territory assistive technology programs funded through the State Assistive Technology Act, including implementing agencies subcontracted for AT Section 4 activities. This program will award up to 5 grants of $75,000 each, and this program is offered once per year during the summer. On this journey, grants for nonprofits exist to address the needs of people living with paralysis in their communities. Some questions we've been asked for those interested in applying include the following: who can apply for a quality of life grant? What are the different types of grants available? What are some project examples that the Quality of Life Grants program has funded in previous years? I hope that the information shared across these slides have given you a better understanding of our Quality of Life Grants program and a reminder that we welcome and accept 501c3 nonprofit organizations. Meet Edna. Edna utilized the Paralysis Resource Center and the Paralysis Resource Guide to educate her on what to expect while living with paralysis. Once home, Edna found herself retraining the caregivers herself, teaching them to cook, do laundry, and different ways to bathe and transfer her. She realized there was a gap in training in Ohio where hands-on training for home health aides was not required. She applied for a Quality of Life grant, which helped her establish the Compassions Training and Awareness Center, which focused on proper caregiver training. She has received a total of 3 grants and trained over 600 caregivers. Most recently, the Compassion Center has moved into a new location with a functional living room, kitchen, and bathroom designed for training. Our Military and Veterans Initiative supports all military service members, no matter what era they served in. Injury does not need to be combat-related. We focus on providing tailored information and referral services that will help guide service members to the military and veterans healthcare systems. We also do outreach to military treatment facilities and VA medical centers, and we strive to connect service men, women, and their families with the Peer and Family Support Program for an added layer of support. In addition, 46% of Quality of Life grant recipients reported that their projects served military or veterans with paralysis. For more information, please visit www.christopherreeve.org. The Paralysis Resource Center also works to build education around self-advocacy efforts. We work on educating policymakers on paralysis-related issues. We participate in coalitions and work to improve public policy. Our policy team works to build grassroots support and engagement. Through our Advocate for Change program, you can lend your voice to the Reeve Foundation and make a difference for people living with paralysis, their families, and caregivers. Most recently, we have worked to advocate for a better understanding of COVID-19 and its impact on people living with paralysis, advocating for the rights of disabled travelers, employment rights, and work to preserve, protect, and improve issues around accessibility and civil rights, among more. To combat isolation and foster peer connections, we have interactive space for families impacted by paralysis to share their thoughts, ask questions, and view educational content. We have educational videos on our YouTube channel where you can find videos that cover dental care, adaptive tools for independence, employment, and more. We often have webinars and Facebook Live sessions. Our social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, are updated regularly to showcase upcoming events and other important dates. Our paralysis-related blogs, which cover stories from our community, our staff, updates on the Paralysis Resource Center, a section on COVID-19, relationships, and more topics. And lastly, our online community, Reeve Connect. Our resource map is a great tool to identify resources in your community. Visit our homepage and you will find the resource map tab titled Resource in Your Area. You can then type in your zip code and it will populate based off that zip code. The resources available are relevant to the needs of the paralysis community, and we also highlight organizations who have been recipients of our quality of life grants and those who have applied as well. Lastly, our online community, Reeve Connect, is a platform for people to use to discuss a variety of topics. As you can see on this slide, we have some forums underway with the focus on the new normal, newly paralyzed, health and wellness, and relationships. To sign up, please visit www.community.christopherreeve.org. I would like to finish by saying this. Hero is an extraordinary individual who finds their strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. Here at the Paralysis Resource Center, we stand ready to assist your communities in any way we can. With that being said, I will now introduce our keynote speaker for this event. Our keynote for this webinar is Steve Pennington, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Client Assistance Program. His presentation today, titled Understanding Employment for Individuals with Disabilities During COVID-19, will provide an overview of the Pennsylvania Client Assistance Program, the Rehabilitation Act, and employment services, and navigating programs and services during COVID-19. Mr. Pennington is the CEO and President of the Center for Disability Law and Policy in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In this capacity, he serves as the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Client Assistance Program, which is a statewide advocate for people with disabilities seeking services from the Office of Vocational Rehab and Centers for Independent Living. I am certain we will have a lot to learn today, and I'm certain that Mr. Pennington will provide just that. With that being said, Mr. Pennington, I turn that over to you.
Well, thank you very much. It's really great to be here. I certainly remember when Christopher had his spinal cord injury, and appreciate and am thankful for everything that the foundation is doing. Just looking back to when he was injured and looking at not only the spinal cord injury, but stroke and multiple sclerosis as well. Even though that's not that long ago, the idea of employment was something that certainly wasn't the first thing that the individual thought of, and when that question arose, back then it was really, I think, a different atmosphere. People with paralysis and stroke and MS were often considered to be not employable. Now, jumping to today, especially with the focus on employment first, the assumption is that everybody can work, regardless of the nature or extent of the disability, of their disability. And, especially in Pennsylvania, when you look across the state agencies that provide services for people with disabilities, some are really trying to catch up to that idea that beyond simply providing supports, more should be done to help the individual really focus on developing a meaningful career. And in Pennsylvania, looking across the state and the state programs, county programs, the providers, there's only one office, one state program that focuses on employment, and that's the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. And what's unique about, and I'm going to refer to that as OVR, and what's unique about OVR is that employment is really their only focus. And unlike Social Security or workers' compensation or other state or federal programs, in helping the individual become employed, it focuses upon training and services with the goal of achieving a meaningful career. So it really isn't simply a program that operates under the assumption that our job is to simply find something that a person who has had a stroke or a spinal cord injury or MS, their focus is not simply to find that person employment, but as I've said, provide the training and services that will help them achieve something meaningful in the workplace. Now, when you talk about OVR, the question I get a lot is, well, what is the origin of that program? And it was created at the turn of the 20th century. It's been around for a while when Congress passed a law to help soldiers, injured soldiers, primarily with physical disabilities coming out of World War I. And between that time and the early 70s, the program really wasn't so much focused on employment, but was focused on helping the person obtain the rehabilitation services that they needed. In 1973, Congress amended this law, and it became the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And if you work in the area of disability, it's pretty tough not to at least have heard of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And what it did is it created vocational rehabilitation programs in every state and territory. And unlike its predecessor law, the law that had been in place since the beginning of the century, it really changed to develop a vocational rehabilitation process that recognized that the VRC, the vocational rehabilitation counselor, who would be working with OVR and the individual, it really created a partnership between those two people so that it really moved away from a paternalistic system where somebody with a disability, a person with a disability, would go to OVR and be told, here's what we're going to do for you, here's the job that we think you should have. It created this partnership, and within the law created a number of rights for the individual to ensure that this relationship was maintained. At the same time, in 1973, that the Congress created this VR program focusing upon the development of a partnership between the individual and the VR program. It created the client assistance program, and the purpose of the client assistance program was to really help in the development of this partnership. So this was really new. VR counselors had never, been required to work one-on-one with a VR customer. There was, prior to 1973, the idea that the individual would choose a vocational goal that would be involved in the process of identifying, what they wanted to do in terms of work, have a voice in the development of an individualized plan for employment. This was all brand new. So people with disabilities throughout, across the country were now, cast into this new role of working with the VR counselor, and the VR counselor was now in a position of really having to work collaboratively with the individual. And Congress believed that there may be some bumps along the road. In fact, some people believe that there may be bumps along the road today, that despite the fact that the law is, over 45 years of age, the need for CAP to assist in this process of both the VRC and the individual getting to a point where the individual, achieves a meaningful goal, that meaningful employment. This is still something that the client assistance program is still a program that's of value. So on one hand, you have in Pennsylvania the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, which includes within it blindness and visual services. So OVR, which includes what is called BVS, is required to provide services to the full range of disability. And it's an eligibility program. You have to apply for services. You have to show that you have a significant disability that impacts your functional ability to work. And once you're found eligible, there is a whole host of services they can provide, from reimbursement for college and training, to assistive technology, to van modifications. I would recommend for anybody interested in VR to go to its website. OVR is within the Department of Labor and Industry, and if you type in www.dli.pa.gov or DLI@pa.gov, you're going to get to the Department of Labor and Industry website, and at that point you can click on disability, and it will take you to OVR, and you can learn much more about the program, and you can also click on a map of Pennsylvania, which will help you identify which office is in your particular geographical area. Now, CAP, you know, if when people ask me, well, tell me about CAP, and I'm going to go over, you know, what we do, but I think the more fundamental question, at least for us, is why CAP? And I explained earlier that it really is a program focused on helping the individual obtain the services that they need to become employed. But our mission is really to ensure that this process that OVR must go through with the individual is open and responsive to their individualized needs. And really, when I say open and responsive, open is really accessible to make sure that regardless of your disability, and especially with regard to the severity of your disability, that you're always going to have the opportunity to avail yourself of these services. And this is a critical point because over the years, the focus upon employment first has really required OVR to serve everybody, regardless of the severity of their disability. So in the old days, when I first took over, there were assumptions made that certain people with certain disabilities just were not eligible for services because they were too severely disabled. And that's no longer the case. Like I've said, regardless of the severity, you have a right to apply and be considered for services. So access to services. Access really kind of in a different way than the ADA. We're not talking about access in terms of physical access or program access, but access as a person with a disability to the services that OVR provides. And so our job is to make sure that everybody has an opportunity, everybody with a disability has an opportunity to apply, and to the extent they're found eligible to receive service. Open and responsive. Responsive, it's rather obvious, but there is within the VR process, within this process, certain time frames for the development of an individualized plan for employment, for how long it takes to be found eligible. So, we focus not only making sure that the person has access to the services, but that the agency follows these timelines. Some are statutory, some are have been developed through OVR policy. And so we're really focused on making sure it's open and responsive. Maybe the most important part is individualized needs. So this is not a cookie cutter program where an individual would apply and get the same services that everybody else would get. well, let me say this. They would get the same services, but those services would be adapted to the needs of the individual. So OVR, I think, unlike a lot of other programs, state programs in Pennsylvania that provide services to people with disabilities, really focuses on the individual and what the individual needs, and not simply upon providing a service which may be used across the program that is offered. So that, you know, so again, our mission is really to ensure that the VR system, the OVR system, is open and responsive to the individual's needs. Now, so that's really, when you talk about CAP, that's why CAP is around. That's, you know, really what we focus upon. What and how CAP does, what and how CAP achieves this is really through 6 areas. And for anybody that knows CAP, that has used CAP services, or maybe is a provider, or is a program that works with people with disabilities, CAP is often viewed just in terms of advocacy, and I'll talk about that in a bit, but advocacy in the sense that we work directly with the OVR applicant or customer to resolve issues or try to help them resolve problems that they have with the VR agency. But we do, CAP really does, you know, much more than that. So I think, like most programs, we're focused on providing information. So we not only, when we provide information, want to talk about the client assistance program, but we also know OVR, we also know blindness and visual services. We understand how those programs work. We can help the individual understand what his or her rights are in those programs. We are familiar with other programs within the Department of Human Services, within the Department of Education, and so that, you know, if a person has simply a question about what OVR does, we're able to answer that, but we're also able to answer much more. Obviously, one of the big questions that come up is, Social Security, whether it's SSDI, the disability program for people who have worked, or SSI, which is the supplemental security program for low-income individuals. You know, Social Security may be the first option that an individual with paralysis may choose to get, but certainly not the only option. And when employment does arise, when the issue of employment does arise, there is almost this built-in conflict between how do I maintain my benefits, or maybe I should say it this way, what impact will going to OVR have upon my Social Security benefits, and that is really, really important question to answer, and it requires, and CAP certainly is not the only place. There are other programs that provide counseling with regard to Social Security and vis-a-vis OVR, and but providing information across state agencies, not only about what OVR does, helping the individual understand what their rights are. That's, we do quite a bit of that, both individually and through outreach. Now, if you have somebody that's either contemplating going to OVR or has applied or is a customer, a question often arises as well with regard to how do I navigate this system? Because if you have applied and you've been found eligible, the next stage is to develop an individualized plan for employment, which again really is not something the VR counselor does alone, but must incorporate the person, take into consideration what the individual wants. So oftentimes we'll get calls and people will say, well, tell us, what are the key things I should know about navigating this system? And we'll always talk about vocational goals. So OVR is not a program for college reimbursement. It's not a program for vehicle mod or assistive technology. It all revolves around those services are certainly important, but they're really there to primarily help the person achieve a vocational goal. So if you go to OVR and you haven't really given any consideration to a vocational goal, it is a disadvantage. So what we want to do is we want to help the person understand the VR process, help them navigate it. So it's not simply saying, here's what you need to do, but be there during this process to offer whatever advice the person may need. The third thing is to offer guidance. So once a person becomes an OVR customer, we can help guide the person through the process. So, advice is really something that's given to the individual about specific topics or specific aspects of the process. Guidance is really our effort to help the person get from the beginning of the process through the successful completion of the services and training and ultimately employment. So guidance is an important aspect of what we do. And I think it's important to understand that the advice and guidance we give is really a one-on-one thing. It doesn't necessarily involve a conflict or a problem or an issue with OVR. It's really something we do one-on-one with the individual. The fourth area is advocacy, and that's really how people generally think of CAP as being there when a problem arises and helping resolve that. So once you get to the advocacy, it really moves beyond a one-on-one relationship between CAP and the individual to working with the individual in their relationship with OVR, however that happens, so that we have issues where people want new counselors. We have issues where the customer does not believe that they're receiving the services that they should be receiving under the law. In advocacy, really, the advocates in our office, we're a small office. We have two advocates. They really focus upon individual advocacy, but there's also systemic advocacy where my job is really to work on policy, whether it's working on an OVR, being on an OVR work group to develop a policy, revise a policy, or in our experience, recommending to OVR that maybe a policy be developed to deal with a issue that we see has arisen across Pennsylvania. So advocacy is individual advocacy as well as systemic advocacy. Now, to the extent, regardless of whether you come to CAP or not, to the extent that the issue cannot work out, the customer has a right to appeal it, and we can help the person with the appeal. And this may require that we attend an impartial hearing to not only make sure that the process is fair for the individual, but to promote or to work on behalf of resolving the case in that person's to that person's benefit. And we also can help the person with issues arising with employers that with employment that comes out of that is a part of the OVR process under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that's really an overview of CAP and what we do. Now, talking about COVID-19, when I thought about that, I wanted to talk about the current state of OVR, and even before getting to COVID-19, an important issue is the fact that July 1st of 2019, OVR went on the order of selection, which meant that starting July 1st, 2019, until present, everybody that goes to OVR is found eligible and becomes a customer is waitlisted, which, obviously has a significant impact upon the customer's ability to get services as they would have been provided prior to the closure of the order. OVR right now has taken a number of people. I believe the last number was roughly 4,500 people off the wait list, but there are a significant number of people that remain on the wait list. So, that was a significant issue in July of 2019. And then obviously in the middle of March of 2020, this year, all of the OVR brick and mortar offices across the state were closed, and OVR is operating virtually through all of the vocational rehabilitation counselors are working from home. And the impact of that has really been has really shifted the focus to those people who were already eligible and were working with a vocational rehabilitation counselor. The opportunity under COVID for kids to get pre-employment training, for customers to get supported employment, to have assessments done to look at disability, that's all been significantly impacted. Now, what I suggest, and I talked a little bit about the Department of Labor and Industry website. If you go on that and click disability, you're going to be able to find a map of where your OVR office is at, and there's a telephone number, and to the extent that you want to apply for services or are a customer and maybe haven't had a counselor assigned, or you're a customer and you haven't been able to get a hold of your counselor, I would encourage you to call that number. Right now, under Governor Wolf's order, it's across all state agencies, but the brick and mortar offices, OVR offices, which is 15 OVR, 6 BVS, and the Hiram G. Andrews Rehabilitation Center, those are going to remain closed until all counties are green. Now, even though it would appear in Pennsylvania that all counties are green, I really haven't looked to see if Lebanon County has moved from yellow to green. I am not getting any specific information about when those offices will open. COVID has had, obviously, a significant impact in Pennsylvania, as it has on all other states. The number of new cases coming into OVR has significantly declined. OVR is providing some services to the disability community across the Commonwealth, and we would certainly encourage anybody with any question or the need for any information to get a hold of us to see if there's anything, to provide that, or see if there's anything we can do. We continue to manage our caseload, and actually have added new cases over the past 3 months. So within the OVR world of vocational rehabilitation, regardless of what question you have, you can, get a hold of us. And, my email is steve@equalemployment.org. You can certainly email me or give me a call or text me at 267-615-6893. And, we'll do everything we can to help you. Overall is, our focus is really upon this idea of access to these services. And in preparation for this call, I was asked to develop some recommendations, which I'd like to review now. So the first is one that I've mentioned twice. Get on the Department of Labor and Industry website to learn about the VR program, learn about how those services can be accessed, learn which office covers your geographical area. Know that while contacting CAP is one option, you can also contact the Center for Independent Living in your community. They provide services outside of OVR. Their focus is upon reducing barriers in the community. OVR is really focused upon helping you as an individual become employed, but the Independent Living Centers certainly know a lot about the services provided in your community. Also, take the time and look at the community programs. You were shown a map of the resources through the foundation, the PRCs. Familiarize yourself with the services that are provided across the state agencies, whether it's employment through OVR or programs through other state agencies like DHS or the Department of Education. If you go on the CAP website at www.equalemployment.org, we have a self-advocacy guide. It's very, very important if you're in this process to become your own self-advocate. And we really go through in great detail how it is that you can become a self-advocate. And it's really geared towards the OVR process. So it's not just generalizations about what you need to do in order to empower yourself to obtain these services, but it's really a step. It's looking at the step-by-step VR process, and it makes suggestions with regard to what you should do if you want in your effort to self-advocate. And then finally, I would say don't really settle for anything less than achieving a meaningful career. I can't emphasize enough the fact that you really are in a position of deciding what it is that you want to do, what kind of career that you want to develop, what kind of job that you want to have. So it's it is a great opportunity to use services provided by a state agency to, achieve your goals in the future. So with that, I don't know how we're doing in terms of time. looks to be 2 o'clock. I don't see any questions. Do the moderators have anything they want to cover?
Hi, Steve. Yeah, so that doesn't look like we have any questions at the moment. Everyone who's listening in, if you would like to follow up with a question, you do have my email address. Please feel free to forward that question to me. In the meantime, I'd like to thank our speaker, Steve, for really being, for bringing us this information from the Pennsylvania Client Assistance Program. I think it was very useful and informative for our participants today. And for everyone who joined in on this webinar, I'd like to thank you again for taking this time this afternoon to listen to our webinar today. Steve, I think that's it for today, and thank you everybody for joining us. And we will continue to look forward for more opportunities to bring additional information about community supports in your area. And again, if there are any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or visit our website. Steve, thank you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.